Hey there, Mountaineers! Welcome to another episode of Matterhorn Movies. Today I'm joined by Alex, the historian, and we're going to be reviewing Pinocchio, the classic Pinocchio, the Pinocchio you guys all love. We recently rewatched the movie. I rewatched it just a couple hours ago, so it's fresh in my mind. I was really sort of disappointed in the way the Snow White one went because I was not prepared at all, and I know a lot of you guys felt the same way, so this time I took notes and I'm prepared. So hopefully this one will be better than our Snow White one. Alex really carried the conversation that episode, so thank you, Alex, for carrying the conversation.
Aw, shucks, it's what I do.
Let's see, so Pinocchio, released in 1940. It was Disney's second theatrical release, and a little sort of tidbit that I wrote down is that it started production, not really production. I'm going to say production. It started production during Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I'm sure Alex might be able to give more info on that, but I'm not gonna make him say unnecessary things he doesn't want to say. So let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and give my first impressions. Well, not really first impressions. My 128th impression on the movie. Pinocchio for me is really up there when it comes to Disney movies. Snow White isn't really my favorite of all time, but Pinocchio is probably in my top 5, maybe even top 3 Disney movies. It really comes down to the fact that it just really, at least for me, it sort of like hits home. I mean, who wasn't a bratty kid who turned into a donkey that then got sent away to a mine, you know? Alex, what are your first, or not really first, what are your impressions on the movie Pinocchio?
Pinocchio is really a heartwarming tale. I mean, I really mean that, because it's actually my favorite classic Disney movie, and it's definitely one of those kinds of movies that will really make you want to tear up, because I mean, as I especially have. I mean, it's just, I don't know I'm at a loss of words. It's just a beautiful story, and the way it's done, and I really love the characters, and of course everybody knows the theme song of the movie. I mean, and it's become the theme song for the Disney company as well. So I mean, this movie is just, it's so spectacular, and it's such a great adventure.
Yeah, I mean, Snow White, at least for me, didn't have those sort of tear-jerking moments that Pinocchio did. And one of the really tear-jerking moments is when Geppetto first goes out looking for Pinocchio right when Pinocchio gets captured by Stromboli. He's in the birdcage, and Geppetto's out in the rain looking for Pinocchio, because Pinocchio has basically become Geppetto's son. That's really what he is. And Geppetto really just cares for him so much. He would go out in the rain. He would get swallowed by a whale to find Pinocchio. That's how much he cares for him.
Yeah, I mean, Geppetto is such a great little, like, father figure. I mean, you know, Geppetto always wanted to have a son of his own, but then never had the chance. And so, like, you know, he wanted Pinocchio to be real. And one of my favorite parts of the beginning of the movie is definitely the little rhyme that the Blue Fairy says to make Pinocchio come alive. And she says, "Little puppet made of pine, wake, the gift of life is thine." And I just think that's the coolest little dialogue that they put in there for the movie. And definitely, I think that Pinocchio, the character, starts off definitely metaphorically innocent. He doesn't know anything about the world, and he's so excited to see it. And that's what makes the movie so heartwarming, is the fact that you can kind of understand where Pinocchio comes from, on the sense that, you know, you two were once as inquisitive and as hungry for knowledge as he was, and hungry for adventure. So definitely, I think that Pinocchio the character is definitely lovable.
And for some reason, I always thought the Blue Fairy said "little puppet made of pie." I maintained that thought even when I rewatched it this morning, and I even wrote down in my list, what does that mean? I was gonna ask you what that meant, but we can go ahead
but
and
I
skip
just
over
revealed it to you. Yes, little puppet made of pine.
I should have read the script. I knew. Oh well. That's just a little embarrassing moment of the day for Matterhorn Matt. But oh my goodness.
I'm going to remember that forever.
Well, let's go ahead and start off with the sort of opening of the movie. I wanted to point out the attention to detail with all of the little gizmos and clocks and music boxes that Geppetto has. The attention to detail in the first, I'd say, opening 20-25 minutes is really, it just shows how much, at least I can notice probably, how much the animation has improved since Snow White. I mean, the first opening shot when not really the first opening shot, but when Jiminy Cricket is starting to narrate and he opens the book and the camera zooms in to the picture on the book, it's just like, what? How did they do that? And we talked about this in our Snow White review, how amazing these animators are, but I just wanted to point out the attention to detail in the first 20-25 minutes, and even in the entire movie as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, like the scene where they're touring, or where they're kind of showing you around Geppetto's shop, and you see all the different clocks and all the different things that they do. I mean, you have to think somebody animated all of that. You know, somebody did all that, and they put it into movie form, and it's just amazing to think, like, you know, like especially all the backgrounds, the way that they were painted. It's definitely shows the artistry and the master craftsmanship of animation that these old animators did. It's just amazing, the amount of detail. I mean, you don't find that in other cartoons of that time. I mean, granted, Pinocchio isn't just a cartoon, it's a full-length movie, but I mean, nevertheless, you don't see that kind of work in any other company of that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure we're going to be saying this for every animated movie we're going to be reviewing, but yeah, the animation in this movie is really top-notch. Good on you, Disney, for making the animation look so amazing. I guess the real theme of this movie is learning right from wrong. That's really what gets Pinocchio into all of the mischief that he gets into. He first goes off with, okay, I always thought Honest John was his real name, and I can never for the life of me remember what his like actual name is. So I'm just gonna call him
Foulfellow.
I can't even pronounce that, so I'm just gonna go with Honest John. Wait, say it again. I'll try my best to pronounce it.
It's two words: foul, as in a foul person, and then fellow. Yes, foul fellow.
Oh, foul fellow. Well, now I can greet him personally when I see him in the parks, but I think I'm just gonna call him Honest John. But yeah, that's really what gets Pinocchio into all the mischief that he does. When he first meets up with Honest John, he's so naive, he doesn't know any better from what they're saying. Honest John tells him that he could be an actor with Stromboli, and he can make, I guess, like, all this money, and Pinocchio doesn't know any better. He was basically just, like, born. He was basically born yesterday. Oh my gosh. That's like, you could use that saying on him. Yeah, he was basically born yesterday. He doesn't know anything about what's right from wrong. I mean, granted, Jiminy Cricket is supposed to be the one that helps him, but this sort of moves on to another little point that I wanted to bring up. The entire movie is kind of Jiminy Cricket's fault. I mean, starting off, Jiminy's late, like he says, for Pinocchio's first day of school. If he were there with Pinocchio, he wouldn't have gone off with Honest John. And secondly, when he decides to give up on Pinocchio when he sees how much the people love him at Stromboli's show, he just literally walks out on him. And I feel like if maybe those two scenes were... This is just really like nitpicks, I guess, but I feel like if that would have happened oppositely, it wouldn't have... the movie wouldn't have happened, obviously, but yeah, that's just what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that that Jiminy Cricket needed to learn for himself how to be a stronger, positive figure, because like you said, he was late for his first day, and he certainly let Pinocchio kind of tell him what's going on instead of telling Pinocchio what to do. And something I wanted to mention about Jiminy Cricket actually is the way that he was animated, because a lot of people actually talk about this. Jiminy Cricket doesn't really look like a cricket, in any way, and so it's kind of funny the way that Ward Kimball animated him, made him look so cute and lovable, but yet that nose that he has reminds you that he's a cricket. So I just thought that was a really cool little thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah, I had something that I wanted to say, but I can't remember it. I'm gonna sort of segue into the, I guess, like, musical side of this movie. It's not really, quote, unquote, a musical like a lot of other Disney movies are, but like Alex said in the beginning, the opening song, When You Wish Upon a Star, has basically become the theme song for the entire company, like Alex said. And you hear it everywhere. I'm sure I've heard it in other places besides Disney, like in commercials, not just made by Disney. But the music in this movie is just so, I guess the word is like iconic, and a lot of it is really heartwarming for me. Like when Geppetto first finishes, I guess, sort of making Pinocchio, and he has him walk all around the shop that he has, and he has him play with Figaro and Cleo. The song that he's sort of singing to himself is really, I don't know, it just really gets to me every time.
Yeah, it's definitely a really cute moment when he does that. And I love Figaro the cat. It's such a cute little cat.
Yeah, I was going to say, Figaro is the embodiment of me in a cat. Like, that's if I were a cat, I would want to be Figaro.
Yeah. This movie definitely has those kinds of lovable characters. I mean, you see a lot of Disney movies, and you wonder, what's the formula? And so Disney really began their formula with this movie. I mean, I always talk about how Disney has those cute little lovable animal characters on the side, and it started really with this movie, because you had Figaro and you had Cleo, and they were definitely the funny little characters that were kind of comedic relief and stuff like that. So definitely it began with this movie, and then of course you feel for Geppetto and you feel for Pinocchio, and Geppetto just wanting to have a son for himself, and then Pinocchio, of course, wanting to be so adventurous but not knowing right from wrong. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, this movie's amazing, guys. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Let's sort of move on to the humor in the movie. Now, I noticed on my viewing this morning, oh my gosh, excuse me, that a lot of the humor was delivered by Jiminy Cricket, and a lot of the humor that he delivered was more, I guess, orientated towards adults, because he had a lot of sort of jokes that, well, not really jokes, a lot of gags that kids wouldn't necessarily find funny, but the adults watching with the kids would find funny. Like when he's watching Geppetto in his workshop for the very first time, he puts his hand on the figurine, and his hand's on a figurine of a girl, and it's her butt that his hand is on. Yeah, just little just little stuff like that just really makes me, I guess, like appreciate it more, because they really tried to make the movie for everyone, not just for like little kids to watch.
Yeah, and there's also some humor that Disney would not put in movies nowadays. So, for instance, you meet Foulfellow and Gideon, the two characters that try to lead Pinocchio astray. And Gideon, he is inebriated throughout the whole movie. And a lot of people don't really realize that, but you can tell because he's always hiccuping and he's always kind of woozy and wobbly. And that's an interesting thing that at the time Disney thought was very funny and and laughable, but nowadays with the political correctness, no one would want to see that in a animated Disney movie. So I thought that was really interesting. I mean, granted, I think that makes Gideon's character so funny is because he's never quite all there. So I think it's just it's hilarious. But I thought that was an interesting contrast in today's humor.
Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to think of other examples, but the one you brought up really sort of hit it on the head with Gideon. Like you said, you wouldn't see that kind of, I guess, like humor in modern day Disney movies. Like exactly what Alex said. Let's see. I feel like this movie is really, man. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to another topic I wrote down. Let's talk about the characters in the movie. Now, Geppetto, a carpenter. Well, not just a carpenter, I'm sure he has like a side job where he does other things, but Geppetto is really, I don't know, the more I think about it, the more I feel like he's alone. I mean, he really just talks to his cat and his fish, and you don't see him interact with any other humans until Pinocchio comes in. I feel like Geppetto just really wanted that sort of, I guess, just like human interaction, because he's been talking to his fish all day. But then there's also that side where he could be just wanting a son, to teach how to make birdhouses or to teach how to make clocks. I mean, it's really, like Alex said, you really feel for Geppetto, especially when he goes looking for Pinocchio, like I mentioned.
Well, especially since the fact that Geppetto, he really does like kids. I mean, he creates all kinds of marionette puppets and dolls and things for children of the whole village and stuff like that. And, he's definitely a very lovable person in that way. He's kind of like the Santa Claus of the village, really. And so you can see why he would feel so lonely, especially like, Matterhorn Matt said, talking to his fish and his cat all day,
Yeah, and even the Blue Fairy brings it up. She says something along the lines of that he's made so many kids happy with the things that he makes, he deserves to have his wish come true.
Yes, yeah, she does say that, and I thought that was so sweet.
Let's go ahead and move on to Pinocchio himself. We mentioned earlier that he's really naive. He doesn't know basically anything. He was literally born yesterday. And so it really, I guess it can be annoying for some viewers to see Pinocchio not do the right thing, even though a lot of people probably expect him to do the right thing, like to not go with Honest John. After Jiminy told him not to, he just ignores Jiminy and goes along with Honest John and his friend, whatever. I can't remember his name. But yeah, Pinocchio, he really grows as a character, especially at the end when he literally sacrifices himself to save Geppetto, Cleo, and Figaro from Monstro. And that is really what the Blue Fairy meant when she said that he needs to be selfless, he needs to be honest, he needs to, basically all that stuff. I guess he like filled out the criteria for becoming a real boy once he literally sacrificed himself to save his family.
Yes, and the most amazing thing about that, the turning point of his character was really when he went to Pleasure Island, and and he saw what it was like to be a bad kid, and and then to be faced with the fact that he would be turning into a donkey, and so it really changed his character from then on, because he realized that there was a consequence to doing bad things. It wasn't just about deciding whether to do right from wrong, but it was about why he should do right from wrong. That that there are consequences to things.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pleasure Island, that's another topic that I wanted to bring up. That whole, I guess, like, event of Pleasure Island, seeing the kids turn into donkeys, I feel like, at least for me, it was really spooky to watch. It was always like the scary part of the movie, like when Snow White gets chased into, or not, doesn't get chased, runs into the forest, and she imagines all the scary trees and the monsters coming at her. But I feel like in Pinocchio, this one couple of scenes with seeing the donkeys turn into kids with I don't know the name of the fellow who's like in red, and he like leading everything, but he basically sells off all these kids to other companies to work for them, and they don't ever get to see their families again. And that part of the movie really gets to me, seeing that one little donkey. I think his name was Alexander, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, the guy in red, I don't know his name again. Alexander says something along the lines of he wants to go see his mom, and he's basically begging them, and he throws them into a sort of cage where all the other donkeys that can still talk are. And it's just really not depressing, it's really sad to see all these good boys, well, not really good boys, they're bad boys, but they could have been good boys at one point, and they decided to go to this Pleasure Island, throw away, well, they didn't know at the time, to throw away their future to go work for other companies for free and get whipped in the back all day. It's really sad.
I think definitely one of the things that is so scary about that scene is just like how suddenly it happens, and Pinocchio's having fun with his new friend Lampwick, and they're shooting some pool and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden his friend starts changing, and then Pinocchio starts changing, which I always thought that was kind of funny. I was like, he's a marionette puppet. How does that happen? But nevertheless, it's definitely a good metaphor for bad children and what they do and how it changes them, and so seeing Pinocchio escape was really relieving for me.
Yeah, me too. And another part is that it feels like seeing the kids turn into donkeys, you think to yourself, that could be me. If let's say you're a 13-year-old kid who likes to disobey his parents or likes to break a lot of things, or I don't know, whatever the kids did in the movie, they see that scene and they think, oh my gosh, that could be me. Like, literally, like they say in the movie, making a jackass out of yourself. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but
yeah, I mean, if you're referencing a donkey, then it should be fine to say that.
Okay, good. But I always found it interesting how Geppetto went from looking around his town looking for Pinocchio, and then somehow within the span of a day or so ends up in the belly of a whale at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah, that's true. It does kind of, the timing of it all does kind of get muddled, but I wanted to mention something kind of cool, like a little fun fact actually about the movie. So you know how there's the scene where Stromboli, he's taking Pinocchio away, and he's moving his little theater troupe on, and he's got these wagons that I believe actually he's even got donkeys that are pulling the wagons. Anyway, so funny little thing there. But the wagons themselves were not animated by hand-drawn means. They were actually live-action models that were pulled around. Yes. So basically, the wagons were live-action models that were filmed with actual film, and then all they did was go back into the black and white film and color it to the color of the wagon, which I think the wagon was mostly red and a little bit of blue. Mm-hmm. And so they did that. And so technically, that is the first time in a feature-length Disney film that you would have seen live action and animation combined, even though you wouldn't see it again all the way up until the movie Song of the South in the 1940s. So I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to kind of share that little tidbit with you guys.
That is super interesting. I noticed this morning when I watched it that something about those wagons looked a little, not like off, but just like a little different from the rest of the animation. But now you guys know, go out and tell all of your friends that the wagons weren't actually animated.
Yeah.
Now let's sort of move on to when Pinocchio escapes Pleasure Island and goes looking for his dad. He gets to his house. Him and Jiminy, I guess like the blue fairy, sends a bird with a message saying that his dad is trapped in a whale. I guess that's just what I assumed happened. It could be just a random bird carrying a random letter, but he reads that, and the first thing Pinocchio does once he finds out that his dad is trapped in a whale, he goes to try and find him, not even second guessing himself. Jiminy was like, "What the heck? Are you actually gonna go try and find him? He's in a whale. There's no saving him." He doesn't care. He just keeps walking, trying to go find his dad. And when he eventually does find his dad, I mean, it's a really heartwarming scene when Geppetto is trying to fish for food, because I don't know how long they've been in there. I think they made it out to seem like they've been in there for like a couple weeks or maybe a month, but they're trying to find food, him and Cleo and Figaro, and I guess Monstro hasn't eaten anything in a while. And then all of a sudden Monstro opens his mouth, all these trout, or not really, I guess not trout, but maybe trout, I don't know, all these fish start pouring in, and Geppetto starts using his fishing rod to catch the fish, and he accidentally catches Pinocchio, and it's sort of a sweet little moment when they reunite.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite scenes, is because he's so surprised, and then Pinocchio has to tell Geppetto why he's got a tail and ears, and so he feels a little ashamed, and you can kind of see that Pinocchio's starting to realize, this is something to be embarrassed about, is the fact that he misbehaved so badly.
Yeah, that's really another sort of big theme of the movie, along with telling right from wrong. It's knowing when to, just like Alex said. Alex, anything else that you wanted to say?
There was. The ending of the movie is just so amazing, because you think that Pinocchio is dead, and because he had saved his father from the whale Monstro, and then Geppetto goes, no, it's Jiminy Cricket goes looking for Pinocchio, and then sees him face down in a puddle of water, and oh my gosh, that is one of those creepy scenes in the movie that you totally do not expect out of a Disney movie. But anyway, after that, Pinocchio's in bed, and and you assume that he's dead, but then the blue fairy comes in and then changes him into a real boy and brings him back to life, and it's just such a wonderful ending to the story, because Pinocchio finally gets what he really wants, and Geppetto gets what he really wants, and it's exactly what those characters need.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Like you said, when Jiminy Cricket finds him face down in the water, you do not expect that from a Disney movie like something like Frozen, where, well, I guess Frozen. No, I'm not going to compare this to Frozen. um, yeah, it is really. It just like comes out of nowhere, like you said. It really just like hits you. Oh my gosh, did he just die trying to save his family? And then, like you said, he comes back to life because of the blue fairy. He finally learned right from wrong. He, like I said, filled out all the criteria of becoming a real boy. And it really is a heartwarming moment, like Alex said.
Mm-hmm. Because just as the blueberry, just, just as the blue fairy says, a little boy who can't be good might just as well be made of wood.
Oh my gosh, I was gonna say that quote.
Oh, sorry.
Dang it. I actually wrote it down. Oh well. He beat me to the punch, guys.
I'm sorry, I totally ruined it.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, I think that's just about it for the review of Pinocchio, unless Alex has some closing thoughts he'd like to say.
Nope.
Alright, next, I believe I announced in the first episode that we're going to be doing these sort of classic Disney reviews every first week of the next of the month. Every first week of the month. That's what I'm trying to say. So next month you guys can expect to see a review of the movie that comes after Pinocchio, which I believe is Bambi. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I could be, okay, I could be wrong, and this is going to be the first time I've seen Bambi. I've never seen the movie. So you guys are going to get my sort of actual first impressions. But anyways, guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and have a great big beautiful tomorrow.